Hello, everyone. So I want to welcome everyone that's joined us today for the webinar, The Rise of E-Commerce, Are Payment Gateways Ready? I know it's kind of a slow news day. There's not a lot going on, so we're really glad you're able to join us today, and we're looking forward to spending some time with you. A little bit of housekeeping, first and foremost. So before we begin, if you're having difficulties accessing the GoToMeeting link and have not downloaded the app, simply choose the browser option, and you should have luck accessing the webinar. A copy of the presentation as well as a recording will be provided within 24 hours, so stay tuned. Also, if you have any questions, please submit them in the GoToMeeting toolbar. Time permitting, we will be answering questions at the end. If we don't get to your question, fear not, we will reach out to you directly with an answer. Okay, time for some introductions. My name is Steve Vickers. I'm the Director of Revenue here at TSG. I am joined by John Jacoby, our Market Intelligence Manager. We will be your guides through this presentation. It's our pleasure to be with you today. Looking through the attendee list, I see a lot of companies that TSG has worked with, but there are a few that are new to us. So I would like to spend a couple of moments to briefly share with everyone a little more about TSG before we get started. Founded in 2006 and headquartered in Omaha, Nebraska, TSG is the largest payment-centric consulting firm with a core focus on the acquiring side of the payment space. On the left, you will see 5 main areas that our firm specializes in. I'm going to start off with management consulting. Our team of senior associates specializes in key areas of the payment space and on average has over 25 years of industry experience. We have consulted the major card brands, top processors, ISOs, gateways, financial institutions, private equity firms, ISVs, and others that want to start up, improve, or explore new opportunities in payments. The next two sections demonstrate really what sets us apart from other consulting firms: data. The first is AIM, which stands for Acquiring Industry Metrics. AIM is TSG's data warehouse of nearly 4 million merchants that are provided in an anonymized format from over 30 different contributing payment service providers. AIM is the only tool with a diverse set of pricing, profitability, attrition, and growth benchmarks for the acquiring space and represents nearly 50% of all card accepting merchants in the U.S. Next up is GEM, which stands for Gateway Enterprise Metrics. This platform that TSG has constructed allows gateways to review transaction performance globally, benchmark APIs, and understand the merchant's experience to spot issues and adjust for success. The majority of information we're covering on today's webinar was derived from the GEM platform and the tools associated with it. Gateways that are part of GEM represent nearly 2/3 of all e-commerce traffic in the United States. Moving along to market intelligence and e-reports. TSG's market intelligence team is a full-service research shop, meaning this team has the capability to leverage multiple research techniques for engagements, including primary and secondary research capabilities such as surveys, interviews, mystery shopping, and more. Areas of focus can include competitive analysis, market intelligence, assessments of international payments markets, ISV lead lists, marketing materials such as webinars like we're on today, white papers, and infographics, payments industry education, and also this group publishes e-reports on a one-off and annual subscription basis. Finally, we have buy, sell, and valuations. TSG has become the go-to advisor for M&A deals ranging between $10 and $100 million. TSG provides support for buy-side and sell-side activities, including due diligence, matchmaking, and go-to-market representation. So if you're looking at acquiring a portfolio or payments-related technology, or looking to unwind a position, our dedicated team can help. Okay, so here's a list of the topics that John and I will be covering with you today. You heard me mention GEM, so I'll give you a brief background on this dynamic platform and how it delivers benchmarking insights from its 3 pillars. If you haven't picked up on it yet, we specialize in working with gateways here at TSG, and we also like to help them celebrate their successes. You likely saw some recent press on the GEM Awards, so I'll spend a minute or two to give you some more information on these. John will be covering the latter part of our webinar, discussing Trueshop, the evolution of e-commerce, the Trueshop process, and an overview of the analysis that this service provides. Lastly, as I mentioned before, we will be taking your questions to close things out. So here are the 3 pillars of GEM. But to get a better idea of how these work, it may make sense for me to give you a brief history on how the GEM platform came to be. Around 5 years ago, a merchant acquiring client of TSG's that used a third-party gateway suspected a difference in gateway performance on their SLAs, but had no way to benchmark or prove it. They reached out to us for assistance, and we constructed a platform to provide benchmarking analysis. But here's what we found out. Throughout this process, and with other conversations with gateways and acquirers, there was a universal need for these types of findings and benchmarks. So what started off as a one-time project quickly turned into a viable product. Fast forward to today, and as I had stated earlier, gateways that represent nearly 2/3 of all e-commerce traffic in the US are now part of GEM. The platform provides crucial insights and is utilized by gateways of all sizes. To get a better idea of how this happens, I'll take you through the three main areas of focus for GEM that you see here. First, we look at gateways from a performance perspective. What makes this platform different is that TSG sends real Visa and MasterCard authorizations and gateway checks from multiple US and global locations around the clock. Using that data, we produce to our GEM subscribers detailed reports that catalog their gateway's performance, but also other GEM gateways in an anonymized fashion. These reports are delivered on a weekly, monthly, semi-annual, and annual basis. In addition to these reports, we also provide real-time GEM alerts if there is a disruption or noticeable fluctuation in service. Secondly, we examine the experience from the developer's perspective. Because TSG is sending live authorizations through the gateway, we have taken on the role of the developer. We catalog and provide assessments on the integration, testing, and certification process, as well as an assessment of the gateway's developers' resources, documentation, APIs, just to name a few. This process is also benchmarked in an anonymous fashion. And there are two distinct reports that we provide GEM subscribers that detail these findings on an annual basis. And finally, we provide analysis from the merchant's perspective. We look at the relationship between the merchant and gateways by taking on the persona of a merchant to document their experience of getting set up to process online transactions and how one gateway's process compares to another. Twice a year, TSG conducts this exercise and provides reports back to our GEM members. This information is the cornerstone of what we'll be reviewing today, and John will share with you how TSG's Trueshop makes that all happen. You heard me mention a gateway awards a minute ago. TSG's GEM platform annually honors leading payment providers for several different categories, such as best performing gateway, fastest transactions, gateway uptime, and best sales process, to name a few. As you can see, the list includes some very well-known gateways, and we encourage winners to use these awards for marketing purposes if they like. So to keep things moving forward, I'm now going to hand things off to John to take us through the next part of this presentation, starting off with Trueshop and how it provides payment gateways a unique perspective from the merchant's point of view. John?
Awesome. Thank you, Steve. So as Steve mentioned, the e-commerce merchant experience is the third pillar of GEM, but the report that we're going to be reviewing today is actually powered by Trueshop, which is TSG's mystery shopping service. And at its core, Trueshop is really a mystery shopping service that demonstrates what a merchant might actually experience as they interact with various payment providers in the market. So today for this exercise, we're going to be highlighting the merchant journey from the perspective of an SMB e-commerce merchant. But Trueshop is actually capable of measuring the experience of many types of SMB businesses. Trueshop can even help companies evaluate and test their various partners, sales channels, and even from various perspectives. The service is also great for monitoring internal performance, as well as evaluating competitive offerings or strategies. And really what makes Trueshop different from other mystery shopping services is the real merchant data that we do use. Our team is actually able to reconstruct, record, and improve customer sales interactions to help leadership craft the perfect merchant experience. So as I mentioned previously, today we're going to be walking through the experience of an SMB e-commerce merchant, really to understand the varying degrees of difficulty that an SMB e-commerce merchant faces when attempting to begin processing payments online. And setting up an e-commerce website and really an e-commerce business in general is not a very easy task. But over the years, we've seen some of these barriers to entry dissipate, at least to an extent. Today, we're going to be taking a look at this trend as we kind of walk through the process that a merchant might face when looking to accept payments through Chase Merchant Services. Now, this is not an endorsement of Chase. We're simply using them as an example today in this report. And the data, just kind of as a note before we get started into the actual report, so the data that you're going to be seeing today was collected during this year, during the months of August and September. And as we walk through the report, please keep in mind that the report is composed from the merchant's perspective only. So on the previous slide, we kind of walked through the purpose of the webinar, and it's really to understand the varying degrees of difficulty that SMB e-commerce merchants face when they begin processing payments online. But taking a step back here, we have to figure out why this is important to the merchants, why having a smooth merchant experience is beneficial not only to the merchant, but to your business as well. So even prior to the pandemic, many experts had predicted that a majority of growth within the U.S. payments ecosystem is going to be driven by e-commerce and software-led distribution, meaning that relevant payment providers will have to support the vast and expansive e-commerce channel. And in order to win in this arena, gateway and payment providers will have to adapt to provide more than just payment acceptance. E-commerce is evolving. Even just 10 or so years ago, it was sufficient to only provide merchants payment acceptance via a gateway and a merchant account. Now, merchants require support for a website, a shopping cart, reporting capabilities, and much, much more. We've really observed this slow but steady consolidation among e-commerce platforms, and the providers that have emerged as market leaders have done so through integrating, partnering, and acquiring ancillary software platforms in order to create the one-stop shop for e-commerce. And demonstrated by the graphic on this slide, we can see that the e-commerce payment providers need to offer much more than just payments to remain relevant. They have to start thinking holistically.
Yeah, I think let's pause here for a second, because I think one of the things that's really jumped out with our conversations with clients is the fact that due to COVID, traditional brick and mortar locations, that, we're talking about e-commerce merchants here, but even traditional brick and mortar locations that weren't even thinking about an online presence were suddenly thrust into the fold in terms of needing to be able to move their business from card present to card not present in a very short amount of time. And so, this type of service and this type of the need for gateways and payment service providers to offer all of these things, not only to online merchants, but now brick and mortar, and helping them hold their hands, has become more important than ever.
Absolutely. And now more than ever, there's new entrants into the e-commerce space. Companies that have never accepted payments online before are now beginning to do so. And so there's a lot of education that has to occur in this particular space to get merchants up to speed and to help them operate these types of businesses.
Right.
So moving here to the next slide, we're going to go over the 6 major scoring categories for this analysis. And when constructing this report, our team looks at the process holistically from the merchant's perspective, which means that we're not going to be just evaluating the gateway or the merchant account provider. We're evaluating the entire process, including partnerships and integrations. So looking at the first scoring category here, we have the website launch. And really here what we're doing is we're evaluating if the provider has the ability to help the merchant build the website either through an in-house service or through an integrated partnership. The same is really being done for the second category as well, the shopping cart. We're looking at if these relationships exist with shopping cart providers, are they marketed on the company's website, and are really they offered to the merchant by their sales representatives. The third category here is the application, and this score is going to reflect the format, the length, and the delivery method that the application is provided to the merchant. The next section here is the underwriting section, which is going to record all of the data points that the merchant is required to provide in order to have their merchant account approved by the underwriting and risk department. Now, the total cost section is going to take into account all the major expenses that a merchant might face when beginning to accept cards online. So this includes website, gateway, shopping cart, and all other associated fees and costs. The final area here is the ease to launch, which is going to reflect the overall time, effort, and complexity of the entire process.
The interesting thing about this slide, John, is the fact that if we were to go back in time 5 years, those first 2 sections probably wouldn't be here. And what we've noticed is a big seismic shift in terms of payment service providers, gateways that are needing to move themselves up in the order of operations for merchants when it comes time for them to select a payment provider. Payments has almost become an afterthought at this point.
Absolutely. I mean, the first thing that merchants have to face, especially now with the pandemic, is I have to create a website. I have to make sure that my gateway is integrated into the website. I have to make sure that my shopping cart is integrated into both the gateway and the website. So that area right there is really important to highlight, because consolidation among these groups is something that's happened very rapidly in the e-commerce space. And being able to do so is a huge benefit, not only to the merchant, but also to the provider, right? So these are additional services that you can upcharge for.
Yeah, for all of those people out there that know business owners, I've got a friend that owns a restaurant, and he got into the business because he liked to cook, and he spends about 10% of his time cooking and 90% of his time doing other things. So taking care of the website launch, shopping cart, as many of those steps as possible for those business owners is more important now than ever.
Absolutely. So going here to the next slide, this is our merchant profile. So for this particular report, we use a real-life example of a small family rancher whose supply line and really their business in general had been disrupted due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So this rancher had never sold online previously, and they had never accepted credit cards before. So the easier this process was, the better for this particular merchant. Now, traditionally, this rancher had sold their products direct to local grocers and distributors, but due to the pandemic, they saw a dramatic decrease in sales. So to help offset this loss, exactly the scenario that Steve was describing earlier, the rancher decided to begin selling direct to consumer via a website. And this report actually walks through the process of that merchant doing so. Now, this rancher had an estimated monthly card volume for the new website to be around $10,000 per month, with an average transaction between $150 and $200. So as we go through this experience, please keep in mind that the data is from the perspective of this one particular merchant.
Yeah, I think one thing to make note of here, and for the people in the back that maybe can't hear, right? So this is a real merchant. This isn't somebody made up. But from a Trueshop perspective, depending on what our clients' needs are, we could construct this based on whatever type of merchant they want and whatever size type of merchant.
Exactly.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
So flipping over here to the overall scoring section. So now you can notice here, obviously, that some of the other companies in the analysis have been redacted, but GEM subscribers will receive this report without any edits or redactions. So as I mentioned previously, we're going to be walking through Chase Merchant Services. And here we can see that Chase had an overall score of 29 out of 30, which by all accounts is a very good score. And Chase performed well in this analysis, primarily due to its use of its WePay platform. So WePay has really allowed Chase to integrate their payment processing capabilities with multiple different software providers that really have helped Chase provide merchants with an all-in-one type solution. And now here on the next slide, we're going to take a look at the 6 categories that we had mentioned previously and how Chase scored in each one of those categories to add up to the score of 29 out of 30. So now taking a look at Chase's performance a bit deeper, we can see that the pricing category was really the only area that Chase dropped any points. But we're going to dive into each one of these categories here in a minute, beginning with the website launch. But I first wanted to highlight a few things about Chase and this process in general. So now, if we looked at this process historically, or this analysis historically, what we would have done maybe 5 or so years ago, it would have looked very, very different. The merchant would have had to contact Chase to figure out which website builder or hosting services were compatible with their chosen gateway. The merchant would then have to figure out if the website and the gateway were compatible with the shopping cart, and then they would have to hire probably technical talent in order to integrate that solution together to make it operational. Now, if we fast forward to today, the solution that Chase offered and really that they presented to the merchant, it was really built all into a single user interface and can be completed within a matter of minutes with no phone calls to representatives. There is no coding or technical requirements to integrate the website and the gateway and the shopping cart. Everything is really built all into the process and is made easy to understand. And that's highlighted by that theme of consolidation that we were talking about earlier. And by integrating these various partner solutions into the merchant setup process, Chase was able to create basically a near seamless experience as the merchant applied for the merchant account, built their website, and began operating their business and accepting payments. So taking a look here at the website and shopping cart scoring section, we can see that Chase leveraged their relationship with BigCommerce, which is a popular website building platform, primarily template-based, so no coding requirements are required for this type of website construction. And the integration with BigCommerce really allowed Chase merchants to automatically sync their merchant account to a new website and a shopping cart that are all provided within the BigCommerce environment. So now one thing that's really often overlooked in the e-commerce space, especially surrounding integrations and partnerships, is the marketing. So Chase actually markets this relationship with BigCommerce on their website, and they even take it a step further by linking the sign up button directly on the page marketing the partnership. Chase also provided incentives and discounts for merchants to leverage this solution with BigCommerce. And overall, the process was extremely simple. And because the setup process is linked directly on Chase's website, it makes it very easy for the merchant to sign up and complete the process.
You know, you heard me mention before regarding website hosting and shopping carts and how we've seen a shift in the order of operations from a merchant's perspective. And so really, again, just to hammer this home, payments really has become an afterthought, and so many providers are the providers that are finding success are the ones that are offering the service on the front end through very strong referral relationships. And in some cases, what we're seeing, potential white label solutions. You know, you hear about shopping cart abandonment when you're talking about e-commerce. Well, this is the same concept when it comes to setting up merchants, keeping them engaged from the very beginning all the way through the end.
Exactly. So shifting gears here a little bit over to the application. Like I mentioned earlier, the merchant application for Chase can be accessed directly from Chase's website. So when merchants visit Chase's website, they notice the established relationship with BigCommerce and they decide to sign up for that platform. So they're taken directly to Chase's online application where they're asked general questions about themselves and their business. The application is just 5 steps, and most of the information the merchants can recall directly off the top of their head, which from the merchant's perspective is always preferable because they don't have to go hunting around for different legal documents or proof of address and those other types of things that are typically required in more stringent underwriting scenarios. So once the application is completed and submitted to Chase, the merchant is then actually linked directly to the setup process with BigCommerce to begin creating their website. The merchant can quite literally begin accepting payments on their website in a matter of minutes, depending on how long they spend designing their website, their marketing message, and uploading their inventory.
John, I think real quickly before we move on, would you agree that we've seen a big shift in the way that merchants are completing this application, meaning less hand-holding, more of a seamless process without the need for someone, you know, from either the gateway or the PSP side to just actually get on a phone and help them?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There's been tons of advancement in the underwriting space that have helped companies manage their risk profiles, help them minimize and being able to ID merchants upfront and automatically. And really by simplifying that process and requiring the less stringent information, they're able to push merchants through underwriting not only quicker, but more efficiently.
Right. Cool.
So going here to the underwriting section, so that's a good transition there, Steve. But before we kind of dig into this section, please remember that this is from the merchant's perspective, meaning that the simpler and the easier the underwriting process, the better it is from the merchant's perspective. So the lower the score here, the better. And underwriting in general is really, it's a balancing act for acquirers and payment providers. And some companies are generally more at risk adverse than others, but merchants really prefer a simpler underwriting process as opposed to one that's going to drag out several days and require them to dig through their drawer of legal documents to try to provide the underwriting department the information that they need. So now diving into this section here, the list on the left now is a chart of every line item that is required on Chase's application. And those required line items are highlighted here with the green as well as indicated by the check mark in the second column there. And now taking a look at this information, so a majority of the information is actually very general and can easily be filled out without the need to locate any sensitive business documents. And the chart on the right displays any information that the underwriting department required to be on the website before approval. So in this case, Chase actually did not require any of these items to be present on the website, primarily because BigCommerce typically provides merchants with the basic templates for these items, like the return policies, like the shipping policies, and merchants are given the option of customizing these options. But ultimately, they're not required by Chase's underwriting department to be on the website, though they are more or less automatically put on the website through BigCommerce's standard setup process. Now, to get to the underwriting score of 11, we simply counted the line items that are required for the application and the website. Chase required just 11 items compared to the average of 18 by the other 14 providers in this report. And really by making this comparison and investigating the specific requirements for the applications, we can reason that Chase's underwriting process is comparatively simpler than the average.
I think the big takeaway here, everybody that's listening in and watching, is this is a financial institution first and foremost. So this was a bit surprising to me. Just traditionally being in this business and knowing FIs are traditionally a little bit more risk adverse. And so what you're seeing here, I think the story that this slide is telling is there is a really big shift in terms of the amount of information that's required for merchants to get set up for processing and the direction that that's going in the marketplace.
Absolutely. So moving on here to perhaps the most important section from the merchant's perspective. So this is the cost or the pricing section. And just to reiterate here, we're evaluating this process from the holistic perspective. So we're taking a look at all of the costs that are incurred to the merchant. Taking a look at the website section, so the merchant is paying the $29.95 for the base package from BigCommerce. There were no other gateway fees that were assessed by Chase, and the processing costs were a standard flat rate offering of $2.9 and 25 cents per transaction. And using our merchant estimates of about $10,000 a month, we can assume that the average monthly cost for processing to be around $305 roughly. So with no other additional fees charged by Chase, we can calculate the average month of processing and website costs comes out to about $334.95 for this particular merchant. Now, we can annualize this $334.95, which equates to around a total annual cost of operating this e-commerce business at around $4,019 in order to operate the website as well as process payments. And this came out to an effective rate of about 3.35%. And this cost actually ranked 8th overall in terms of cost to the merchant. And while Chase did rank 8th in this category, they were only a few $100s off the cheapest option in the analysis when you look at the annualized numbers.
So real quick before we move on, John, do you think the big difference here between, because they scored 8th out of 14, which is probably, this is where they got dinged the most, would it be because of the website costs? Would it be because of the processing costs? What was the main driver behind that?
Yep, so it was really a combination of the website costs. So some providers are able to kind of bake the cost of the website into the processing costs, which is always beneficial. It just means one less monthly cost for the merchant. So that is an area that is driving the cost up, as well as the flat rate for processing costs. I mean, given this is a relatively new merchant to the e-commerce space, so that's really to be expected for that. But it is not necessarily the cheapest option for this merchant in terms of actual processing costs.
I think the processing costs are pretty standard, but I think that there's also a cost for convenience. So even though they're 8, I think that, with a website hosting, again, that's cost of doing business.
Exactly.
Okay.
So taking a look here at our overall notes and comments section. So this is where we describe the process in detail, and we include items here for each provider where they performed well, as well as highlight areas for improvement. So walking through our notes here at the bottom of the page, we can see that Chase's application is being able to access online, and after submitting the application, the merchant is taken directly into the setup process for BigCommerce to create the website, and really that is it. The process is quick, it's simple, and fairly easy to understand. But no process is perfect, which means that there's always areas to improve upon. For Chase currently, the process bills processing separate from the website services, and we always recommend to centralize the billing for the e-commerce channel to make support easier for the merchant. So with so many moving pieces in e-commerce, it may be difficult or confusing for a merchant to correct technical issues or billing issues. So centralizing the support for these items really simplifies things from the merchant's perspective. The second thing here for Chase in terms of areas to improve is potentially to investigate a white label solution where they can brand their own website building tool in order to consolidate their brand and allow really for merchants to recognize Chase as that one-stop shop for e-commerce. And lastly, in terms of additional areas for improvement, we have custom development. So although the process for creating a BigCommerce website is fairly simple, some tech-savvy business owners may know how to do it, but it may seem intimidating for other business owners, especially with so many new companies launching websites and beginning to sell online. Companies like Brand Labs, Digital Hoss, and Guidance all actually provide custom development for BigCommerce websites, which can create and manage a company's online presence. And marketing referral partners like these companies would be another great resource for Chase to offer its merchants. Especially, and they can also potentially even consider acquiring one of these companies and creating a team of in-house talent to support custom development through this particular partnership. But shifting back here very quickly to the positives or things that Chase did well. So Chase had very clear and easy to understand pricing, and that's part of what you get, Steve, with the flat rate pricing model. It was prominently displayed on the website, easy for the merchant to understand. They also promoted their partnership with BigCommerce, which, like I mentioned earlier, is something a lot of companies don't actually do. Chase also provided incentives for using this integration. And by integrating the application process and the setup process for BigCommerce, the experience was made simple and near seamless for the merchant, which is always what you want to see when you go through experiences like this. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over here to Steve to see if we have any questions from the audience.
Thanks, John. Very insightful. And, I hope the material that we covered today gave you all a clear picture of how TSG is helping our clients, and in this case, gateways and PSPs, understand the quickly changing marketplace using research and analytics. I'm looking at the clock, and I know that we've gone a little bit over, but we do have a few questions that I'd like to at least get to. And so the first question is Trueshop available to other types of companies or only payment gateways or GEM subscribers? John, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I can take that one. So absolutely. So this report is provided to GEM subscribers, but Trueshop is a service that is handled by our market intelligence team here at TSG. And so if you'd like to look at something from a different merchant's perspective, or perhaps a card-present merchant, those are things that we can definitely help with and definitely change the perspective of how we're looking at these various companies. We can also help to evaluate various partnerships and integrations as well, so it's not just limited to the e-commerce channel.
Got it. Okay. Secondly, can international gateways participate in GEM? So the answer to that is yeah, absolutely. I mentioned before that we have gateways representing 2/3 of all e-commerce traffic in the United States, but we also have a very good representation of international gateways that utilize GEM because of the fact that we're sending authorizations from over 20 different global locations. They found some real great application in regards to the platform and the reports that are provided and the analytics. So depending on what your needs are and where your gateway is, we could actually customize it to fit your needs. I'm going to take one more question and then we're going to need to cut it out. But the last one, are PayFacs given an unfair advantage in the underwriting given they don't ask for as much information on the front end?
Yeah, I can take that one, Steve. So the answer quite plainly is yes, they are given an advantage. But keep in mind that this report is from the merchant's perspective. And the merchant's not going to necessarily know if they're signing up for a PayFac platform or a more legacy-based acquirer. And because it's from the merchant's perspective, they're really going to just want the easier process. They're not going to care about the legal back-end ramifications of a PayFac platform versus a traditional acquirer.
And really, that's kind of the direction everybody's going anyway.
Exactly.
Less on the front end.
And that's one of the benefits of the PayFac platform in general is being able to board those merchants quickly and easily.
Sure. Okay. Well, I want to take this time to thank everyone that has taken time out of their day to join us. As a reminder, a copy of the presentation as well as the recording of the webinar will arrive in your inbox within the next 24 hours. In the meantime, if you have any questions about TSG, GEM, Trueshop, or any other questions, please feel free to reach out to me. My email address is listed here. From all of us at TSG with John Jacoby, I'm Steve Vickers. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.